Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today is Monte Melkonian, who is known in various capacities both in Armenia and the diaspora, and continues 20 years after the death of her husband Monte Melkonian to talk not just about Monte, his life, his work, but also about what all of that means for Armenia, Armenians everywhere. Seta, thank you for joining us. Yeah. You're in Armenia because this is the 20th anniversary of Monte's death.
Yes, I am in Armenia because I wanted to be close to Armenia at this, round date.
And you have been coming and going since you left Armenia. This isn't your first return.
No, it's not my first return because, Armenia is part of me. So whenever I have the chance, I come and visit.
And you live where now?
Right now, we live in Anchorage, Alaska.
I waited for you to say that. Why? What do you do? How is it? Are there other Armenians?
Yes, I have found some Armenians there. We went there 2 years ago. My husband got an offer from UAA, University of Alaska, Anchorage, and he teaches architecture there. And with what was going on in California, the economic disaster that has started in the US, so plus things that I care about are in much better condition in Alaska than other states. So it was a good place to be right now. So we're there for the time being.
You are not just the perpetuator of Monte's memory, Monte as hero, but you also go to great pains to remember and present Monte, the man, the person. Why?
I consider it very, very important because Monte, first of all to me and to people who have known Monte, he has always been kind of a teacher, although Monte did not like hearing that. When I would mention him that, I could have been your student, especially when he taught at Torosian School in Beirut, and he'd say, I would have never wanted to be your teacher. But the reality,
your particularly,
yes,
or teacher generally?
No, my particular teacher. But the fact is that with his everyday life habits, he always was an example to me.
Intentionally? On his part?
No, not intentionally. Not intentionally at all. And I, for one, I want to pass that on to my son and to the people who care about Monte, because Monte is not, as he has been presented, only like a military commander. But he wasn't just a military commander, and I would like to present him from all aspects of life.
Before I ask about Monte, the hero, your son, Saro, is how old?
12 years old, and his name is Saro Monte, and he always says that I wish I had known Monte.
Yes, as many people do. Monte is a hero in a culture at a time when we lack heroes. And we lack heroes in Armenia, we lack heroes in the diaspora. It's almost as if we don't know how to appreciate the man, his work, the context. What do you do, what can we do to continue to keep these stories alive? Not just the legend of the man, but the stories.
I think just the one thing that bothers me about Monte and his stories is a reliable source of stories, because especially the last few years, he has become a folkloric character. So everybody who talks about Monte, they start, fitting Monte into their understanding of the hero. And sometimes they have stories about Monte, and I'm thinking, this is not him. I know it's not him. And sometimes it's really contradictory to what Monte did. But I think when it comes to Monte's hero, I think he would have been the one person who would be very uncomfortable being called a hero, because he couldn't be otherwise. The way he was living, the things he was doing, that's what he is, that's what he was, and he did whatever he thought is the right thing to do. So it wasn't like for a purpose that, oh, he'll get a bravo for it. Oh, no. And there was a time that I remember, like almost the whole world had turned his back on Monte. I mean, the Europe years were quite tough on him. He never lost hope. And I was one of the few people, I mean, I could count on one hand the people that, stayed behind Monte, like helped us, especially during the 2 years in Europe. But then he never lost hope. He always believed in what he was doing. Sometimes I would think like, but how? And he was always like, oh, it's doable. We can do it. I'm like, all right, then if you say so, we'll try.
Let's do a quick rundown. You were born in Anjar, Lebanon. He was born in Fresno, California. Visalia. Then what happened?
Then what happened? Well, there's an interesting story for you. I was Darik Tasaran in a kindergarten, and we were rehearsing an Arabic dance, and a family, an American family, came to our school to watch us rehearse for our, end of year performance. And then I was sitting in our front yard with my sister, and the same car, it was a Volkswagen van. The same car that had come to our school passed by our house because they were at our neighbor's house. And I told my sister, these people came and watched us dance for our rehearsal. That was Monte's family, believe it or not. So Monte and I always joked about it, that we met when I was like 7 years old and he was 11, whatever.
It was fate.
Yeah, yeah. But after that, I met Monte in 78, 79, New Year's Eve. He was living with my sister and her family, and my nephew Avo was his first roommate, and Avo was 2 years old then. And then, his activities were questionable, and one time I confronted him. I said, are you part of Asala? And he goes, I wish. He wasn't then, but everybody thought he was. And then he disappeared. And actually he disappeared the day that our first date was gonna happen, I guess. So he had invited me to a movie, and he never showed up to my sister's house where I was at the time. So our first date did not happen.
Because?
Anyway, because unbeknownst to me, at that time, the Tashnak party did not like what Monte was doing. And supposedly there was an assassination attempt being prepared against him. But because a lot of people inside the Tashnak party loved him so much that they informed him. So, he had
disappeared.
So he had to disappear in a couple of hours, and he disappeared. And then next thing I knew, his pictures were in Arabic news magazines. And my dad came to me and said, look, your friend. And I'm like, okay. I mean, we knew he liked talking to me. When he would visit our house in Anjar during the time he was in Burchamut, he always liked talking to me. And I thought, I speak a little English. I'm a schoolgirl. And he enjoys talking to me rather than other members of my family. And then I managed to have a very brief visit with him while he was in Asala through a contact without, I surprised him. And that was the first time that I felt like, this is a little weird, because he really held me tight and he kissed me, like this little kiss, and I'm like, okay, Americans do that. So anyway, then I came to Armenia, and it was during the war. Almost everybody we know, in my family, relatives, everybody was against my decision to coming to Soviet Armenia to go to school. Monte was one of the very few people who was very, very happy that I came.
So this is before the war?
This is,
during the Lebanese?
Yeah, during the Lebanese Civil War in 1981. During the war, I went to Beirut from Anjar. I went to Beirut for 2 years, Tarwi Hagopian girls' school. And then from there, I came to Armenia to go
study.
to school here. Yes.
Why?
First of all, I was 9 years old, I guess, the first time I wanted to come to Armenia and sing like Kohar Kasparian. My voice is not a soprano, but that was my dream. And I always dreamt that the first country I ever traveled to will be Armenia, and that did come true. It was the first country. And then I wanted to go to school. Unlike the rest of my family members, I really loved going to school. So I knew that if I had stayed in Lebanon, there was very little chance that I would be able to do that during the war.
So you were here from 81?
Till 88. And during that time, a lot of things happened. In 87, first of all, in 85, November 25, Monte called me and on his birthday, and we talked for 1 hour. 2 days later, he got arrested in France. And before that, he was underground. So in 84, I will go back a little bit. In 83, he had called me, July. And on the phone, he told me that he had feelings for me. And that was the time when Asala split had happened. and he thought he was going to die. Therefore, later he explained to me that that's why he had risked a lot to call me. And then I came back to Armenia, and there was no news again. And then letters will come like every once in a while, and then in one of the letters he explained what had happened, and he explained about his emotions also, about his feelings
and
also.
These are letters written from prison?
No, this was written from underground.
I see.
The first underground. Actually, yeah, the first underground, I can call it, until that phone call in '85. So he was underground. Whenever he had chance, he sent me a letter in Armenia. Later, he got arrested, and I didn't hear from him for a couple of months because letters were forbidden to send from prison. And then he started writing again. '87, I went to see him in prison, and that's when we decided to get married. I came back. France did not allow me to go to France again, so I waited for him in England, and he was sent to Yemen, so I joined him in Yemen, and we lived 2 years in Europe together until I managed. Meanwhile, I got accepted to Yerevan State University again to continue my education, and things were changing here. So with the help of people that I had known during my student years, we were able to bring Monte here with his forged passport.
And during the time that Monte was here, he immediately went into battle?
No, no, no. It was funny. He was like very much into everything, but then when we would discuss things later, I would feel like whatever we had talked had an impact. So when we came, when he arrived, actually, I arrived before him. He arrived on October 6th, 1990. And I said, okay, now we're here. Until we get married, you're not going to Karabakh. And it was funny because Oman was there. I mean, it was insane to go to Karabakh. So I said, you can go anywhere you want inside Armenia, but I don't think it's a good idea to go to Karabakh. And believe it or not, he did that. So he was inside. He went to Ijevan. He, of course, met with different parties. He, wanted to know what exactly is going on. He worked. He introduced himself to a lot of specialists from Academy of Sciences, and he wanted to work on a book, Armenia and Its Neighbors. And then after we got married in August 3rd, once the families left, his friend came from France, a journalist friend, and he accompanied her as a translator to Shahumyan, and that was September 14th, I believe. And as soon as he arrived, Erkej Manashid and Buzluk battle started, so he forgot about translating and was on the battlefield.
Remind us what Monte had studied.
Archaeology, Asian history and archaeology.
Did he do any of that in Karabakh during the war years, or is that a silly question?
No, he didn't, but one time at one of his birthdays, I wanted to remind him that he's an archaeologist, so I got him one of those old pottery pieces from Vernissage, actually from Bukinist on Mashdod Street, across from our dormitories. He loved it. And then when he would go, especially in Kelbajar, when I arrived in Kelbajar, he would tell me oh, Seta, there's so many old, things here. You're climbing up the hill, and suddenly behind trees, you see this, kind of symmetric structure, and it's a church, and it's a khachkar. I mean, he enjoyed touching them. Sometimes in his letters, he would, I would ask him a question, I remember I was at the British Museum, and I was very mad that Anahid's, face was from Shadah, Turkey, and whatever. So I was upset. And then when I wrote to him and sent a postcard, he wrote a long section about archaeology and this and that in my letters. So he enjoyed archaeology, but I think he was going to use to infiltrate into Turkey.
I always think that we don't keep the details of our history. We have these big brush, events and people, but not the details. Are there details from his letters, from your memories, that we will have and be able to share and hang on to, especially from the war years?
I think so. I think so, because sometimes, they're the little things, we usually talk about the big battles, the big picture, and there are a lot of beautiful details there that, I love. And even things that during a war, I mean, when he was trying to prepare the Gubatli operation with General Haroyan, for example, he was in nature because they were doing the reconnaissance, so they had to hike a lot. And he would look around and say, this is beautiful. So just appreciating the beauty of the nature in the middle of war when people are dying and there's blood and this and that, it's kind of like contradiction, you would think.
Beautiful.
And then there was, I was told that there was this little kind of, puddle. And he found like little frogs there that they were going to die. So he started searching for a container. And they were thinking like, what is he doing? And then he brought water in his village, in his military village, to just take to that little hole so that those little animals will not die. And I'm thinking, people are dying around you, but he still was able to think about the animals there. And I remember like one time Gomidas saw a porcupine. Porcupine or
porcupine.
Yeah, porcupine on the road, and he stopped, and Monte was in Abo's car in front in a Niva. And from the light, he saw that Gomidas had stopped to pick up the animal. He just got on the radio and said, Gomidas, leave it alone. So it's always, I mean, these are little things, but that's what makes him himself. And one time he wasn't at the headquarters. So I'm walking with Abo, Stabibet. So I'm going up and down, and I saw one of those very poisonous snakes. And it was a baby snake. And then I didn't know that baby snakes are more poisonous than the bigger ones because they don't control their poison. So as soon as I told Abo that there's a little snake there, Abo killed the snake. And then later I told Monte, I said, you know, it was beautiful. The pattern was beautiful, but it was a poisonous snake. And I was scared too. And he goes, why did you tell him you saw it? Didn't you know that they're going to kill it? I'm like, but it's poisonous. He goes, nevertheless, you know, you should let it go. So I think these are important things that we can learn from him. Even in his, very, very extremely stressful times, he still was the man to think about the other things going around him.
Probably what kept him sane.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing them with us. I think that there are so many other things to talk about as well, but these individual personal stories that we don't get in any context, let alone in the Monte Melkonian context. Thank you for sharing them with us.
Thank you for having me, Sati.
And we look forward to whatever works you produce based on these memories, letters, and so forth.
Thank you.
Thank you for following us on CivilNet. We've been talking with Seta Melkonian on the 20th anniversary of the death of Monte Melkonian.